Hello and welcome to Reanimated episode 224. My name's Stuart. With me is my intercoastal co-host, H.A. Conrad. What's up? How you doing?
Not much. I have, been doing the usual thing on the East Coast. Admittedly, was very worried about you and your family and all the folks I know out on the West Coast, given the crazy fire season you guys have been having out there.
Yeah, that's why we're a week delayed. Apologies to listeners. 185,000 people were evacuated from Sonoma County, which is where I live, last week, including my family. I stayed behind because of my job and helped with messaging around the fire. Not like I'm a firefighter. I'm not a firefighter, but it was quite an experience, especially, and what applies to this podcast was being in an area where 185,000 people have been evacuated.
Yeah.
And getting some of that vibe of empty streets, you know?
Yeah.
So that was, to me, like the most, like, oh, I need to talk to HA about this stuff.
Well,
like,
I mean, this is like exactly, well, not exactly, but it's the scenario that is often thrown, obviously a different reason, but this is the thing that's thrown out in a lot of these films is that, like, you know, there's like this kind of crazy situation. And the footage that we were seeing, at least on the East Coast, which is why I tried to keep myself under control. I'll admit, Stuart, I wanted to text you a lot more than I did.
Well, thank you for...
But I figured you were busy and getting inundated, and I also figured, you know, you'd let me know if you needed anything. But I was definitely biting my fingernails over here and stressed out about it. Because it was also, you know, because it's very hard, at least... because like the reports and stuff, like I watched some of the live updates that they were doing from your neck of the woods, and you know, without being on the ground there, it's very hard to get a true sense of what was happening. But so what was it like?
This was a big fire. It was hard to get a true sense of what was happening on the ground, you know, like it was, because it was such a big fire, had such a big front. You could be on one side of the fire looking at it saying, oh, it's not moving too much. This is fine. And then somebody drives up. Like one night I was on this hilltop with a fire chief, just looking down. Fire was about 2 miles down the road, but coming towards us, but it wasn't moving too fast. We were just kind of watching it to get an idea of its movement. And then another, like honestly, where we were perched up on the hill was a very popular spot for fire people to come and look at the fire. So a Cal Fire guy comes by and he's like, oh, it's around behind you on Pepperwood now. And so we were like, all right, we better get the hell out of here. So there was a lot of trying to figure out what the fire was doing. And we didn't have eyes in the sky because I was with like our local firefighters. Mm-hmm. Cal Fire had more state assets and they had a bigger picture than like the town's fire departments. It's a weird way they approach these fires. The first night, it's all your local guys and your local Cal Fire, which is California's state fire department. Mm-hmm. Then after the first night, when this is a huge event like this, the state assets come in, and you've got like National Guard, flying drones, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's really interesting.
Well, and then to complicate things, were the crazy winds, the Santa Ana winds were... And I think we can definitely call those winds the devil winds this time. I mean, that was just, at one point right near your town, they were at like 92 miles an hour, the gusts. So
yeah, there was one measured at 100. It was nasty. It was bad weather, but it was just as bad as 2 years ago. Unfortunately, this exact same scenario sort of happened, but it was the only real difference was that it was cold during our fire this year, and it was really hot during the fire in 2017.
And that's when Santa Rosa had all those losses, right? It pretty much took out.
In that fire, we lost something like 5,500 homes, and in this one, we've lost so far 180, with 130 of those, 130 odd being in Sonoma County. That's terrible. Like there are people who are, you know, whose lives are shattered, but it's nothing nearly as bad as 2017.
Right. And also not easier, but a little less daunting to help that many people rebuild versus the number that was in 2017. So hopefully that will happen pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, you know, in some weird twisted way, when there are thousands of people in the same boat, you get economies of scale. The feds and the state come in and really help out. In this one, I think we're going to be more on our own. So it's going to be interesting. Well, I shouldn't say interesting. It's going to be challenging no matter what. And it'll be a completely different recovery process. And that's kind of what I do for the local areas. I assist in that. So I'll be busy for a while. A couple more years of very busy work.
And then the other thing, just adding to all of this, like in addition to the evacuations, which was crazy enough, and that moving that number of people out safely. And I saw there were some people that chose to try to wait it out, and I saw that the fire department was really trying to get everybody to leave just because it was just not going to be a good scenario and puts people in danger to try to rescue those people. But in addition to all of this, the power outages added to it, and there were power outages like all over the place because deliberate, so that I think they were hoping the fire wouldn't spread.
Well, they were hoping the fire wouldn't start.
Well, and then it did because they
unfortunately,
think, right?
there was. We still have to figure out why the ignition happened. It basically started really right outside or right inside the biggest geothermal power plant in the world, which is only a few miles from here. But whether or not they were under the power shutdown or not is yet to be known. Like, there's going to be some serious questions that have to be asked and answered about the ignition of this fire.
Yeah,
the power shutoff was basically in effect. It still is for some people here who where the fire got really close to their homes. My house got its power back 3 or 4 days ago. We still don't have gas though, so no hot water, no cooking. Other than on like barbecue and toaster ovens and stuff like that. We're still kind of waiting to get back to normal.
Yeah.
School's been closed. School is gonna be closed until Wednesday, it looks like, or maybe Thursday. So the kids haven't been in school for more than a week. It throws everything kind of upside down. We're just trying to keep things normal, and the way that our town has been doing that is by having like multiple Halloween events.
I saw that, but you know what? Like, I think that's a great thing to do, and it's got to be scary for the kids too, just not knowing what's happening, and clearly everybody's stressed, and on top of everything, it's like hard to breathe, and they're all wearing the little masks and that crazy thing. So
the air's been okay the last few days. We have air purifiers going in the house, but it hasn't been too bad outside. It's just you never know. If the wind changes, it could get bad again. Again, the eerie feeling of driving around in an empty city was really
disturbing. I bet.
It wasn't always empty because there were lots of mutual aid, police, and National Guard who were patrolling the empty towns to look for looters, which was great. Like, I gave you a nice warm fuzzy feeling.
Yep.
So, we made a lot of offers of thanks to people like San Francisco PD who were here, Oakland, Vacaville, and our own, internal, our own hometown fire police. It was just like, it's so heartwarming to see. We had 5,000 firefighters here from all up and down the state.
That's
and out of state. It's so cool. But of course now they're down in LA helping that city with its own fires. So this is just a crappy scenario all around, and I just want rain, and it's not even on the forecast yet.
I know. Well, I hope things continue to improve, and let's hope they get the LA fires under control, because I've also got friends down there, and that's kind of a crazy thing too. So, and that one started right by the Getty, though I did enjoy all the articles about why the Getty art was safe. Which there's been several, and this comes out every year, fire season, but they talk about how they built the Getty. It's kind of insane. You should take a peek if you haven't.
So let's turn to other news. So in the news, we do have a couple of things to talk about before we get to our picture, which is I Am Alone, a 2017 film. First up is some odd news, I think.
Yeah.
That AMC is choosing not to syndicate, or whatever the proper word is, their new Walking Dead spinoff on any online streaming service.
Right. And I don't know what that means. Does it mean they're going to come up with their own? It's a little unclear.
Well, this article from Uproxx that we're linking to suggests that they are trying to push people to cable.
Yep.
which is absurd.
That's absurd. And I have a feeling that this decision is going to be reversed because the majority of people watch this on streaming services. And I mean, even what I do with sort of more recent, like our Fear the Walking Dead stuff, I just subscribe to that. So I'm able to watch it every week, but I don't have cable. Like I have not had cable or TV. Like we don't own a TV. And I don't think that we're alone. I don't think we're alone in that type of thing. I mean, like,
I don't think you're alone, but I don't know that you have the majority numbers. I really, you'd need to do a poll. Like, I have cable, but only because Comcast, my cable provider, makes it so much cheaper for me to have cable than just have internet. Like, they're also trying to prop up their cable numbers with people like me who would rather not have it. I mean, the cable box sits in a drawer. It's not plugged into the TV, but so I pay for cable. I don't use it just because the internet is actually cheaper if I buy cable from them, for now anyway. But yeah. So I'm with you. I don't know. The only upside to this for me is that I can stream through my cable provider's website. I can stream TV shows that air on through their cable online.
Well,
so in theory, I should still be able to watch this show. In theory,
right? And then there's also, I mean, Apple TV just launched, I think on November 1st. So we'll see if any of these things come into play. But I just can't
Disney
believe
Plus comes out in like 10 days.
The Mandalorian. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with this. I kind of think they're going to reverse this decision once it becomes clear that it's a ridiculous decision. But we'll see. Next up, there yet another article about the zombie fungus. So we have talked about this so many times, and they're still discovering new things about this zombie fungus. I have to say, the more they find out about it, the more terrifying it is. I think it's
gross.
It's really gross, but it's also, especially in when you think about this in terms of that new fungus that they've just discovered, or I can't say they've just discovered, but they've just now been sort of talking more about, like the one that is in all the hospitals. When you think about it, and basically what they're talking about is the mechanism for its spreading and why, and it's terrifying. And so basically, the whole, this is what we're talking about is the oh gosh, I always screw up how to pronounce this. It's the cordyceps, the Ophiocordyceps. Yep. So basically, it's got like they can't entirely figure out like what the mechanism, like how it sort of programs the ants that it infects to do this, but they basically have to go out over a stalk. Their whole bodies like kind of fall apart and liquefy in order to spread the spores over the rest of the ant colony. And part of why it does this is that I guess generally it wouldn't be spread before, because what the ants would do is just kind of throw the infected ant out, and so they couldn't spread the spores in the way it normally would. So just kind of creepy and gross, but throwing it out there to disturb everybody else. And then in slightly less disturbing, but also kind of disturbing news, this was a British sort of, would you call it a PSA message? It's a little video done regarding mathematics and science about how to survive a zombie apocalypse. But really what it's about is actually about vaccinations and disease spread and modeling those things. And these are mathematicians from the University of Sheffield. And they're very British in this video, but it is actually kind of cute. Did you get to watch the whole thing, Stuart?
I didn't watch the video. I just read the article.
Oh, the video is adorable and very British. But, you know, one of the things they do talk about at the end when they get a bit more serious is about the spread of measles. And you were probably too busy dealing with fires to hear this news, Stuart, but apparently somebody recently went to Disneyland and perhaps didn't know they were infected with measles, but basically Disneyland had to inform everybody who visited the park that day that somebody who was unvaccinated was there.
When you say recently, I mean this was like 6 to 9 months ago, right?
No. There's another one, I thought.
Awesome.
Yeah, more recently. In any case, the sort of the things that they're talking about, this herd immunity, and like the importance of vaccinations, and also modeling how disease spreads and how you can stop it. It's really, it's terrifying to think about it in the sort of more pragmatic terms, but it's important modeling to do. And basically, they're saying that that 94% of people need to be vaccinated in order to stop the spread of measles. So that's, kind of fun. So, it's really... so, yes, this was as of October 16th that this happened at Disneyland. And so in addition...
Kind of makes me not want to go to Disneyland, because this is not the first time this has happened.
Yep. The last time was in 2015. But this is...
No, it was definitely reported earlier this year.
Oh, maybe there's another one. But, and look, I've talked about this before, but that this happened several years ago when I lived in Boston. And again, I don't think people are doing this on purpose. I don't think they know that they're infected, because sometimes it presents kind of like a flu-like thing. Like, you don't necessarily always get the spots. Like, it feels like, you have a virus or a bug, so they don't know that that's what it is. But there's one easy way to not get it, and that is to vaccinate.
You say they're not doing this on purpose, but they're opting not to get vaccinated, and that...
Well, in the case where the thing happened in Boston, it was somebody from out of the country who came from a country where I don't think that there are funds or there is enough, the public health system isn't, they don't get vaccinations because there isn't the money to do it. So I don't think in that case it was, but I do think we do have control over it in the US now. And yeah, I am judging. And I know a lot of people who are immunocompromised who really need people to be vaccinated. And I also know people with children who can't be vaccinated due to that reason. And it's just really something we could all do, I think. And in this case, the person also visited a Starbucks as well as several other things. And so the sort of, it's a very contagious thing, because it's like if you even cough or whatever, it can just get spread really easily. So like the real world, I mean, this is like real world stuff that they're talking about in the video, but they did a very nice job, I thought, at modeling it in a kind of silly and fun way. So you should check that out when you get a chance.
Okay.
But last up on our more serious topic, our review topic today, we're reviewing I Am Alone, which it was actually it started. They submitted it to a bunch of like horror film festivals and things like that in 2015, and then it was released out on the streaming services in 2017. And this is it's basically that sort of found footage genre type of movie. And it was all filmed in Montrose, Colorado, and we have a link in the notes to an interview with the filmmakers, and that is one of the things they were saying is that part of the reason why they were even able to do this is that they got the buy-in from the town of Montrose, Colorado, and all the townspeople really got into this, I guess, and they did a Kickstarter, and they really, really took this to heart and very much supported this film. So I thought that was kind of cool.
It was interesting to watch this not long. I think there must have been some sort of Blair Witch anniversary recently, because there was all this retrospective on Blair Witch, and they're the grandpappies of this found footage style. This movie definitely borrows from them, up to and including the night vision up the nose shot later in the film. But it's different in that, I'm going to go right into it, HA. It's different in that Blair Witch is super successful because they don't ever show the monster. It's built on terror and suspense, and this looming sense of there's something in the woods. I went camping after I saw that movie. This was in the 90s. Oh
gosh, it was a terrifying movie. It
was a bad idea. Yeah. I did not do well in the woods after watching Blair Witch, because it felt like that, the performances, the shaky cam was nausea inducing. I think this one does a lot better just because of selfie stick technology, basically.
Yeah.
But it was Blair Witch was super effective. This one, they definitely show the zombies, and that might be its weakest link,
Yeah, and this is we should just mention the writers are Robert Palmer and Michael Weiss, and this was entirely funded on Kickstarter. or a lot of it was. So they did make it on a shoestring budget, and using this kind of technique. And this is in somehow like Blair Witch was made also on a shoestring budget, but I agree with you. I think part of why it was successful is that they really utilized what you didn't see to make it even more scary. Also, the audio was just, they really had it down for being out in the woods and terrifying. I grew up in Vermont, and Blair Witch terrified the jeepers out of me. And even though
Is that where it was set? Was it set in Vermont?
it wasn't, it was somewhere in like Michigan, I think.
Okay.
And the thing about it that if you've ever walked around the woods, it's a little, and especially if you've gotten used to living in like cities and things like that, it's desolate out there, and anything there's truly real threats out there, like bear and coyotes and things like that. So that's terrifying enough, but it's all like you can hear things a fair distance. So even if something like, I don't know, steps on a stick or something, it cracks and you hear it throughout the woods, and it's a terrifying thing. So yeah, I didn't sleep for a few nights after watching Blair Witch, actually. I was living in New York at the time.
In the city, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, nothing's gonna get you here, nothing like a Blair Witch or anything, but it still was like really scary to me. So
this movie does not come anywhere close
No.
to that. It's not a scary film. It's not a comedy, but okay. So they do it. Let's go through it a little bit. It starts off with this like
Bear Grylls,
Dr. Marlowe.
Oh yeah. So
It starts off with Dr. Marlowe setting the stage. He's like, it's been 5 days since this infection, whatever outbreak began, and we've got a lone survivor from a reality TV show. He's going to be the answer to all
Right.
of our questions.
Mason.
They introduce us to Mason Riley, which, okay, he's had a haircut.
Yep.
I don't know why they never answer when he got his haircut. I think it's because when they were making the film, the walking around in the wilderness happened in a different year.
Probably.
From the interrogation.
Yeah.
But it would have been nice. It would have been nice to understand why his hair was like way shorter in the interrogation scene,
Right.
which in theory is supposed to happen right after the other scenes of the film.
Well, and I also think that the interrogation scenes are some of the weakest in the film, and I think they're trying to fill in information here. And this is the thing. Like, we've seen films made on a shoestring budget, and you can make up for the fact that maybe you're bare bones and you're using this type of found footage like mechanism, and in this film they use a lot, and look, there's some really great things about how they do this and do storytelling, and I'm like, oh wow, that must have been really hard to edit that stuff together. Like they use CCTV footage and all sorts of things like that. And I mean, it's a little silly, but it is, I get it. And that's fine. But you need to make sure your script and your acting is really tight. And that's not what happened here. This movie runs an hour and a half. And to me, it felt it was like 3 hours long. And I don't think that you needed to do that to tell the story. And it felt like, just in terms of like, the acting and the relation, and maybe they just didn't have enough time to like kind of go through all of this, but it felt very forced. There was a lot of pauses that felt like really long pauses, like somebody maybe forgot their lines. And I couldn't tell if this was because of that or because they were trying to do a lot of improvisation, which they did do in Blair Witch.
They didn't have scripts. Yeah, in Blair Witch, they were actually just left out in the woods.
Yeah, and they just were kind of doing it.
The producers were out in the woods messing with them.
Yeah.
Like, that was how... They didn't see their producers every day, even. Yeah, they were. That was I don't feel like that was what was going on in this movie. This was more on the rails.
And I do feel like maybe they took a first cut through, and maybe some of these interrogation scenes were wedged in, hence the haircut, because they had to like fill in something, and they had to make it like. They have to give you a way to watch the found footage, and this is the mechanism to do it. So basically, Mason's the lone survivor cameraman. He's with this doctor who's trying to figure out what happened to Jacob, who was the main star.
And Jacob Fitz is the other main character that this movie focuses on. It's basically him and Mason.
Yep.
It's basically their two stories because the third leg of the tripod, his name is Adam Levine.
Mm-hmm.
He dies early on he gets eaten.
Yeah.
But I think the two actors who played Mason and Jacob, their names are Gareth, David Lloyd,
And Gunnar Wright.
Gunner Wright. I think they do a decent job.
They do. I mean, Gareth David Lloyd is actually he's been in a lot of stuff. He was in Torchwood, like a bunch of BBC stuff. Like he's a great actor, and I thought that he was pretty convincing in this role. I mean, some of it, as I mentioned, I think that there could have been a better editing of this film and make it a little bit more tight. But I thought it was great. I also thought that the character of Mason was pretty well done.
There's some pretty funny scenes with him.
Yeah, like
when he gets that couple killed the first night.
Like there's a lot with him that's hilarious. He pretty much gets everybody killed, no matter where he is.
He kind of does. He's not a source of calming down the zombie apocalypse. No. But so the Jacob Fitz character, I mean, he's basically a Survivor Man type.
Yeah. Totally. That's exactly what he is.
The show,
and
right?
it's actually
he's even got the bandana and the funny accent, although Survivor Man's Canadian and he's Welsh. But I like Survivor Man. So to me, when I watch this show, when I watch this movie, I'm like, awesome, this is cool. This is exactly how, or it feels a lot like how Survivor Man works. And so I was along for that. Like I was there for that.
Well, what was really funny is that I think they absolutely, that's what they were going for. And so they even make these little like references. Like there's the beginning scene where they're setting up like when Jacob is going out into the wilderness, and this whole particular episode of this reality TV show is that he's supposed to like scale the Rockies, and it's about if somebody got lost in that area of the world. And he talks about the things that he's going to take with him, and this is the setup with his crew. And one of the things he says is like, always have your multi-tool, which is something Survivor Man always says. Mm-hmm. But then there's a little tongue-in-cheek if you watch Survivor Man and watch some of like the earlier episodes with him. So there's this whole episode where Survivor Man at the time with his wife, and Survivor Man is Les Stroud, who's awesome. But he and his wife like live out, and they decide to live out this winter, and they both get Giardia. From the Giardia.
Yeah, that's what he talks about it in this episode.
Jacob talks about this, and the thing is that for Les Stroud and his wife, they didn't realize that that's what was wrong with them for a long time, which is like, aren't you supposed to be a Survivor Man? So, but at least Jacob acknowledges that that's something that would have to be dealt with later. But
I don't understand why, like, you can just boil water.
Or now there's the life straw and all that stuff that can filter stuff
or
out.
Or iodine pills, or all this stuff that you can treat stream water with to effectively do away with the diarrhea. Like, because if you're a survivor and he's like, I can handle Giardia because then I'll go to town if I get it. It's
but
like,
no,
like if you're dehydrated in a survival situation, that's not good for you.
Right.
Like, that's basically what killed that kid in Alaska into the wild.
Right. And on top of it, he is in like the Rockies, and the altitude there, you get dehydrated a lot more quickly. We were just out there a few weeks ago, not in Colorado, but we were out in like Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and I have to tell you, like, it felt like there was not enough water to drink. So that's, like you just couldn't feel hydrated. You always felt a little bit dried out. So if you're kind of new to that area and not used to the altitude, you're going to dehydrate a lot faster. Not to mention the oxygen rate, because it's like thinner air, you're like really kind of struggling if you're not coming from that particular altitude. So anyway, that was kind of there were some funny things to do with that. The other thing was like gooseberries. I don't know, like, have you ever had gooseberries?
No, I can't say I have.
Well, they really do. Like, they talk about this later on, and it's like not necessarily the best thing to be eating while you're out, because it's a diuretic. So
he does mention, like, I can't just keep eating gooseberries, I'll have terrible diarrhea. But he's also been drinking the Giardia water.
Right. So I think he's all in for the diarrhea of this.
He's just like, I really want to have diarrhea today.
But anyway, so but I felt like they did the setup scenes with him really well. I feel like him even walking around and doing his narratives were excellent. So he carries this, and you really believe it. And then, for the like he goes through the first part just kind of alone out there and not knowing what else is going on, and they juxtapose it against what's happening with Mason. And Mason's having a little bit more of a dramatic time, and so that's kind of a funny thing because the whole thing of the show is supposed to be about the sort of drama of the main person in this survivor situation, but really it's the film crew that's supposed to be all safe and sound that's going through the drama, and they go through it pretty quickly. The build up, and they have like the townspeople, like they're doing the sort of the different interviews with people who live in the town about people surviving in the Rockies, and it happened. They jump into it pretty quickly with that things are going wrong. Like there's some guy behind one of the shots just like puking randomly. He's like puking
and then he's
blood.
just sitting over in like on the sidewalk for the rest of the interview also.
Yeah.
And then those weird like military guys roll up on ATVs and yell at them for a minute, like, what are you doing with cameras? And then they have guns out, but it's like handguns.
Right.
It's in a way it doesn't make it. It's like,
no.
What's happening here? Why is the army, or at least some kind of very well equipped militia, already riding around on ATVs like 5 minutes after the outbreak starts?
Yeah, like it seems like it would take a little longer. And then, this film crew, like things are coming to a head pretty quickly. And they, I don't feel like Adam should have been eaten as quickly as he was. Like this just all kind of came to a head, and then suddenly it was like zombie world.
Adam, he always pushes it to the last second.
Yep.
That's like basically his eulogy is, or his epitaph was, he always wanted to get that last shot, and he got eaten pretty good.
Yep.
And he does show up again later in the movie.
He does a couple of times. But I do enjoy like the Mason character. They play things off like he's always like, oh, I'll come back for you, Adam. And then he like definitely doesn't come back for Adam. He kind of does, but like, I mean, he's done. Like he's covered in blood. He's just done. And then Mason's just like, all right, I'm off and running. So
I'm going to go find this barn with John and Carrie, or I don't remember what their names were.
Yeah. And
but
that was
like,
also,
we're getting out of here.
But that was also, so Mason's running around. His ultimate goal is to go to the safe house or whatever it is, to meet up with Jacob.
My biggest takeaway from all of these scenes with Mason and earlier on with Jacob are people look really funny when they're wearing a steady cam helmet.
Yes, like it's a
thing.
Weird motion. They kind of look like strange. I don't know. It's like a very odd.
It looks like they're running in place.
Yeah.
But like things are moving past them, but they're, it's just so, it's kind of jolting.
It is.
To watch somebody pumping their arms.
Yep.
But it's just really funny to watch. So it was kind of like a little bit laughable.
What I also like is like when Mason ends up in the barn with John and Carrie, some other guy pretty much in the exact same situation as Mason comes running through, and they don't let him in.
Yeah.
And they just let him
get
die. And I'm like, okay, well, why was Mason special? Why did these people come out and save him? That was weird. Then he just kind of like keeps going on and lets them get eaten behind him. And, so I mean, I applaud the effort. It just doesn't make total the zombie behavior in general doesn't make total sense. I did think that the attack scene with Jacob in the tent was pretty good.
And then the use of like apparently he sleeps with a camera just set up outside his tent. That's sure. But that captures the him killing the zombie after it's bitten him. I thought that scene worked pretty well. And then the next scene with him is in that same location just during the day. I thought that was effective also.
Yep. And I also thought that in general, his sort of deterioration as he succumbs to the infection was pretty good. Again, it could have been edited down a bit, and I think we could have gotten there more quickly. But I thought that I have no issue with his like whole like transformation. And I think that they did, like imagining being out. I mean, zombie infection aside, imagine being out in the wilderness and you are infected with something, and you're trying to and you're like out of communication with everybody. Yeah. That's like terrifying. And so I thought that he played that terror pretty well.
And the acknowledgement of it later on also, where he's like, hey, can I tell you a secret? I've actually never been in danger.
Right. That's great.
Those sorts of things. It was honestly, some of this was good. It suffered a lot from low budget itis, but they chose a good leading man and they had a decent idea. And Mason Riley ran around with his military training.
Yeah, that they drop in like halfway through. Like, oh, my military training.
And so, like, they intersperse these scenes of these found footage with a couple more, like, reveals with Dr. Marlowe back in the bunker or the shed or the closet where they keep the ladders. It was hard to tell what kind of room they were in.
Yep. But there's a
and he's
map.
just
There's
like-
a map of the U.S. with little lights on it, so it must be official.
Yeah, I thought those were Christmas lights for the longest time. They might have been Christmas lights.
I thought the same, actually.
So they think that Jacob is this candidate for creating a vaccine because it takes him longer to become sick. Is essentially why they're trying to find him, or they want to study the footage to learn more about him from Mason, who wasn't with him for any of the time that he was sick. So it's a little bit like, why are we going through this process? You have all the footage. And this is my biggest number one question of this whole movie is how did they get all the footage?
Right.
Like, especially the selfie stick, which he leaves in the woods at some point and walks away from it after he straps the GoPro to his chest.
Yeah, and they talk about that they took them a while to painstakingly piece all this together, blah, blah, blah. But
it's still only been 5 days
Yeah.
since the outbreak.
Yeah,
so
so-
it couldn't have taken that long.
and they're not going to go out in zombie-infested, like, Rocky Mountain territory where Mason and Jacob were even having a hard time negotiating. Mason with his military training.
It's military training. I mean, yeah.
But the other part of this that was a little bit, I mean, here's the thing. Low budget itis aside, I think that even with the low budget, there were ways to make this better. You know, the implausibility of somebody being that ill and still setting up cameras to get those shots, we know that that's not going to happen. He does try to explain it a little bit at one point when he's super sick, the night vision one where he gets the video from his wife. And he's like, oh, I don't even know why I'm taping myself anymore. And it's a little bit along the lines of, and again, it's a bit implausible in Blair Witch 2, but the main character basically is like, oh, I'm just doing this to feel safe or feel whatever.
It's the only, in Blair Witch, it makes more sense.
It
where
does.
it's the only way that because I think they're all doing it at one point.
Right.
It's the only way that they can like filter the experience that they're having because
Maybe.
they're just so
Terrifying.
scared.
Yeah. But in this case, it was just, and I like, whatever, I'll give it to them. But I thought that the makeup effects of him sort of getting ill, he looked really terrible at the end. And he does like a great job of the, cause he like loses his language. He has a really hard time even coming up with words like infection, like he keeps trying. And I thought that stuff was really good. But again, still don't know where the doctor is pulling all this stuff from. And he says like really obvious things like maybe it was we know he ate gooseberries, we know he drank water, but maybe you, Mason, can come up with something that we're missing. How would Mason know anything? He wasn't present, like, and if he did know something about Jacob's health, like would he really have known that? I don't know. It just felt a little bit like a little bit more thought into your storytelling could have made this a much tighter story. That's all.
Yeah, they needed to. I mean, they had their idea with their found footage. They just needed a way to splice Mason in and leave it open for that sequel, which we have that opportunity at the end of this film.
Yeah.
Where he still has to go and find Jacob. Basically, the entire plot of film 1 has to happen again, with if they wanted to do a sequel, which was Mason. You better go find Jacob and either inject him or take something out of him. I wasn't quite clear on what his instructions were.
And I don't know he was either, but somehow he manages to find some crazy mask thing to put on.
Mask.
Did you see that? That was like, where did he even just grab that from? It was unclear.
And also, who opened the door to the interrogation room and what? Well, that looks creepy.
Yeah. So...
So, yeah, it sets it up for him to go back out into the wilderness. I'm sure there's more cameras out there that he can strap to his back or his face or wherever he needs to strap it. And, of course, we can assume that, no, I guess they would have taken Jacob's chest cam, so he's out there cameraless.
Yep.
Basically nude. It's going to be all up to Mason.
And again, I like the fact that this was done on like a Kickstarter type of budget. I like that they got a whole community involved in this. I think that was pretty cool. Yeah. To have that much support and people backing you, I think is awesome. I'm not like totally down on this film. I think there were a lot of things to like. I just think that, with just a few tweaks, this could have been so much more successful. And I think you kind of have to be a little bit more tight in telling a story when you're using this kind of footage, because it is weird to watch it. It's jarring to watch it. And like, I don't know, even there's points when Mason like gets into the safe house and he goes and like grabs a flashlight and turns it on and off. And I'm like, why is he even doing that?
And then puts it back down again after he notices that it's working. He puts it down.
Yeah, like what? So there's things like it's jarring to watch that kind of footage anyway. So I feel like you got to use it.
Make good choices.
Yeah, make good choices with it. Make good choices about the transitions that you're doing. And then you've got to be really tight in the script and the storytelling. And, you know, just a few tweaks and it would have been a little bit better. But cannot fault Gareth, David Lloyd, or Gunnar Wright. I think they did a great job with what they had. And also they're kind of carrying the whole story. And, you know, and there were some fun moments. Like the Adam sort of reappearance was pretty funny. Where Mason is like talking
while Mason is talking about him.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Like suddenly there's like this stream of zombies going past and you just see Adam there. So it's like, yeah, there he is. So I thought that was fun. You know, so I didn't totally like, I thought there were definitely things to enjoy in this, but as a whole I don't know that it contributed too much to anything like unique or original. What did you think?
It was original enough by splicing in Blair Witch, Survivor Man, and zombies. You've got me, right? Like I like all three of those things, so you know you don't have to sell it anymore. But yeah, all the criticisms we've made stand. It was fun enough for me to sit through 88 minutes or however long it was. So kudos.
So we are gonna delve into the next season of Walking Dead that we have not yet reviewed, which is season 9. At long last, we're almost up on the real timeline, and so we will be coming at you in November and December with that. If you have any comments about this particular film, we'd love to hear what you have to say. You can send us a tweet. ReanimatedPcast is our handle, or drop us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or put a note on our show note, reanimatedpodcast.com. Clearly, I need a little bit more coffee. I think it's because we fell back and I didn't get coffee early enough, so I'm definitely suffering. But join us next time when we talk about season 9 of Walking Dead. Do you want to do 2 episodes of that or just the premiere?
Yeah, we're going to hit up 2.
Okay,
I think.
cool.
Makes sense.
And I hope that California gets some rain, man.
Me too.
But until next time, ciao.
Bye.